Rather, they led her to acknowledge the existence of an unhappiness that seemed always to have been inside her. G made a painting she particularly loved, of slender birch trees in sunlight, and the demented calmness and innocence of these upside-down trees seemed to suggest the possibility of madness as a kind of shelter. How had he understood this nameless, female unhappiness inside her that made madness such a temptation? Unlike other artists they knew, G could not have been accused of exploitation. He didn't suffer from blind male self-importance, and nor had he ever taken any kind of liberty that the public value of his gaze might have seemed to legitimize. He had told her that before he met her, he had resorted greatly to masturbation. Was he in fact claiming this marginal perspective as his own? If so, he had to lay down his masculinity, however temporarily, to claim it. He had approached the marginal sidelingly, as it were, from a sideways direction, participating in its disenfranchisements, in its mute and broken identity, with the difference that he had succeeded in giving it a voice. The early paintings were large portraits, fluid and somewhat naive in style, of recognizable individuals from their region and from the circle of their acquaintance. They were simple and formal, as though G were making a statement about his own honesty at the very moment that he was turning the world upside down. Why were these people upside down? It was all one could ask, yet the answer seemed so obvious. It felt as though any child could answer it, and so the painting succeeded in illuminating a knowledge that the person looking at them already possessed. G began to paint large, intricate landscapes in which nature seemed to be in its heyday, seemed to speak of its power of recovery from human violence, its vigil through successive dawns to re-emerge perennially into the light. It basked in a wordless moral plenitude, innocent and unconscious of the complete inversion it had undergone. And it was this quality of innocence, or ignorance, that succeeded in entirely detaching the representational value of the painting from what it appeared to represent. The question of whether G was actually painting an inverted world, or had simply turned the paintings on their heads and signed them when they were finished, was subject to a curious silence. The first scenario represented a formidable technical challenge. The second was more of an absurdist joke that could be passed off in a matter of minutes. Yet he was never publicly interrogated about it, and the question went unmentioned in the many critical writings about this radical development in his work. Sometimes people asked G's wife about it in private, as though in her presence they were finally safe to risk a display of stupidity. In such moments, she felt realized in her role as a repository for weakness. She didn't resent it, because one learned so much more this way, but it summed something up for her, and not just about art, that so enormous a confusion around the truth could remain veiled in tacit muteness. She guessed this was how everything that was noble was eventually destroyed. G would have agreed with her wholeheartedly, and in fact, she noticed that he began to speak openly about his technique of his own accord, explaining the difficulties of inverted painting that could be resolved only through the use of photographs. Later, he rejected the photographic medium, and the paintings became even larger and more dreamlike and abstract. The question of what a human being actually was had never seemed so unanswerable in any case. He often painted a man cowering alone in bed, the sullied oceanic blankness of the sheets, with a little tormented man somewhere at the top of the frame. G believed that women could not be artists. As far as G's wife was concerned, this was what most people